Okay, another draft question. This comes from Wes Daniels in North Carolina. Hey, Mary Kay, who is the most underrated of the Browns' 9 draft picks? So just so everyone has them here, this is a reminder. These are the 9 guys the Browns picked. Cornerback Martin Emerson, defensive end Alex Wright, wide receiver David Bell, defensive tackle Perry Winfrey, kicker Cade York, running back Jerome Ford, wide receiver Michael Woods II, defensive end Isaiah Thomas, and center Dawson Deaton. Who do you think we're not talking about enough in that group?
That's a really good question. It's a really, really good question. And you know what? I'm going to say Martin Emerson. Their first.
That's going to be who I said.
Oh, really? That's funny. Their first pick in this draft, number 68 overall. The plan going in, and I don't know if they would have taken one of these guys at 44 had they been available, but I suspect they would have. They had an opportunity. They liked 2 of the cornerbacks that went off the board shortly before they picked at number 44. And those 2 were Kyler Gordon and Andrew Booth Jr. out of Clemson. And as I've mentioned several times on this pod, that Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, who was with the Browns and scouted with the Browns all fall, jumped up to number 42 and grabbed a cornerback I think they liked there. And so here they are at 44. They find themselves with a handful of guys that we all thought they would be perfectly fine taking at number 44. And they passed on all those guys, the George Pickens, the John Menchies, the Alec Pierces, the David Ojabos, and they traded down to 68. And they picked up a cornerback there, and they surprised all of us with this cornerback, Martin Emerson, because we really didn't have him on the radar. We didn't have a cornerback on the radar per se. We should have, but we really didn't. But Martin Emerson is their top pick in this draft, and they must have seen something in him. There must be something there for them to go get him at number 68 when guys like draft experts like Dane Brugler of The Athletic had a 5th round grade on him. So the Browns go grab him in the 3rd round. And I think we should all, not sleep on Martin Emerson and see what this young man has.
Yeah, I'm putting up a post of like the 3 players that might define this draft. And I didn't include Emerson, but I put a section in there like why I didn't include him, because you would think the first guy they took you would include. But like he is ultimately your 3rd corner long term. Mm-hmm. Because you've got Denzel locked up, you've got Greg Newsome locked up. But that 3rd corner is important. And he might play this year a lot. It depends on, Greedy Williams is still around, so he might kind of trump that. But, we don't know who's going to be the slot corner. It could be Greg Newsome. He could play. They were doing it last year when Troy Hill was hurt. Greg Newsome would be the outside corner when there were 2 receivers. And then as soon as the other team would go to 3, Greedy would come in and Newsome would slide to the inside. So they could do that kind of as a long-term plan, not as just a stopgap like they did last year. So that's where a guy like Emerson becomes really important, because he's a big, lengthy outside corner. He looks a little different than Denzel and Greg look. And that's a good thing. We talk about building the receiver room like a basketball team. Having variety in the corner room is a good thing too. So I think because he was the first guy they picked, and because it's sort of, he's not going to come in and be a starter necessarily right away, he's kind of the underrated pick, I think.
I think so too. And I do think it will be interesting to see how the role plays out. Because as you mentioned, I think they have him sort of slated to try to learn that nickelback role. And they did end up trading Troy Hill. And so it seems like that's in the cards for him. But the truth about nickelback is you have no idea if a guy can do it until he actually gets out there in a game and tries to do it. And so they'll know soon enough. And if he can't do it, because they don't have MJ Stewart anymore. I mean, MJ Stewart could do it, and he was pretty darn good at it, I thought. So they'll know soon enough if he can or can't do it. And as you mentioned, if they have some flexibility and some options there, because Greg Newsome has demonstrated that he can't. And Martin Emerson has played exclusively outside at Mississippi State. He's practiced some inside, but that's it. He hasn't gone out in a big time game against big time competition and proven that he can do it. So that's something, and he should have, he will have some good competition to go against over the summer. So they'll know if he can do it. But again, until you actually get out there, and not even in a preseason game, in a real game, and demonstrate that you can handle that chore, they won't know.
Slot's tough. It's
Yeah.
really tough. I did
It
a
is.
story on it a few years ago and talked to some of the slot receivers, but also guys who like defend the slot. It's a whole new game in there. You've got to deal with traffic. You've got to deal with big bodies. You've got to, the guys you're going against are super fast and twitchy. You don't have a sideline to help you out. It's a tough thing to learn. But the nice thing is there's not really pressure on Emerson necessarily to, like, he doesn't have to be great in year one. There's time. They can actually develop him and slow play him a little bit if they want.
Yes, absolutely. And that is key. That's always the key to remember, that with these Andrew Berry drafts, do not think of it in terms of what are you going to get out of this guy in the year that he was drafted. I don't think they look at it like that. They even told us in the draft wrap up that they don't really look at it like that per se. They don't have all these holes on the team that they're plugging with these rookies. These are young guys that are going to have an opportunity to develop and to learn and to grow. And then the next year is the year that they're supposed to really kind of hit the ground running.